All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another brand new episode of Did That Age Well? We're here at Dude IDK Studios, and I'm your host, Molly Smith. And today, oh my God, our guest today is so overqualified for this podcast, for this dumb, silly little podcast. We have someone, a lot of the time when people say like, oh, so you have a movie podcast, are you like a cinephile? I'll say, well, I love movies, I do, and I love media analysis, but I'm not like a film school teacher. And today, listener, we have a real life film school teacher, my new friend, Dr. Andy. Hello.
Hey. I mean, to be fair, I'm like a scholar of trash movies. So
Scholar of trash.
I'm not like, my Haneke dissertation. No.
Andy Mike, welcome to the pod. I'm so happy to have you here.
This is great. This is such a beautiful space. And
I know.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We love Dude IDK. And Dude IDK is moving soon, but we will still be giving you the same high quality content that you've come to expect from a Dude IDK podcast. Andy, what's going on with you? Tell me what you've been working on. What is happening?
Well, so I'm a professor at CU Denver in the English department, and I teach film, and specifically I focus on genre a lot. I write a lot about how audiences experience movies. So I'm kind of like less interested in what did Christopher Nolan think, then like how do audiences use this film for their own benefits, especially like queer spectators.
Absolutely.
So and so I wrote a book on the evil child in the horror genre and what's the queer pleasure of those figures. And that's kind of like a lot of what I write about is youth culture and rebellion in cinema.
The monsters, our little monsters.
Exactly.
We love our little monsters.
and I love a coming of age and how we define what it means to come of age,
Yeah.
and how that changes over time. So
Totally. Yeah. And who gets to come of age.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my God, it's so fascinating.
Yeah. And then on the side, I do something else called Rainbow Cult, which is we do immersive cinema experiences, kind of like Rocky Horror, but with other movies. So
fun.
So let's do Clue with a murder mystery in an old mansion, and then watch the film, or let's have Bring It On with a cheerleading troupe in the movie theater.
Fun.
So it's like trying to make movies into an event, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was so moved by Sean Baker's speech at the end of the Oscars when he was talking about the experience of watching movies with other people, which I know you and I were just talking about this the other day, about just how special it is to experience something like a movie, especially a cult movie or something that like has such a rich history with a group of people. Experiencing that together, there's just nothing like it.
There's actually really interesting writing asking if streaming is the death of cult cinema, right?
Wow.
Because we can watch these movies anytime we want to, but we're not watching them the same time anymore.
Right.
And if something distinct has changed in terms of spectatorship in the last 10 years, it's simultaneity.
Interesting.
And so that was part of Rainbow Cult is like, well, how do I make these movies special, right? Because I can watch Clueless anytime I want to, right, at home. But getting together with other people, maybe having drag performers there, that makes it into an event that can only happen once.
That's so true. I think that's such an interesting take about, or I guess an interesting question. Is it the death of cult cinema?
Yeah.
Because we were just talking off air about how Labyrinth, which we're going to be talking about today, has some of the markers of a cult film. Like, for instance, it was more popular after its release, once it was available to watch on video and on TV. And so there's kind of this, like, I feel like there's sort of this tension between both the community aspect that comes from the rewatching experiences of cult movies, and also the phenomenon of the release of this movie wasn't that exciting or special or notable, but then once it was available for people to watch at home, then out of that grew this in-person experience.
Yeah. So interestingly, I'm teaching a class right now on cult movies.
So cool.
And we're about halfway through the semester. We've done the kind of like So Bad It's Good kind of films. So Showgirls, The Room, and now we're kind of entering into era of like Grey Gardens and films that it's interesting called almost like rescued from their own omission, or a lot of times cult movies are ahead of their time. So like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, right? It's just like it just didn't. It wasn't aesthetic that the audience was ready for yet,
right?
And so that's a really kind of interesting feature. Labyrinth, I think it was in some ways. Ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And gosh, when you think about like the nostalgia we have now for practical effects, I think Labyrinth is a film that wouldn't happen today because it's not efficient. Right? It's too expensive. They would say, well, why would we create these huge creatures when we can just CGI it, right?
Right, yeah.
And so I think that there's something about the tactile nature of it, the way that it is a time capsule of sorts, a film that could never be made again. Same as Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror could never be made again.
Oh, no, certainly not.
And so I think those films become fascinating for their like anachronistic qualities.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's interesting when we're thinking about how this movie ages, like we kind of asked, like, does it hold up? And then also the question of like, could it be made today? And for Labyrinth, certainly no, it could not be made today. That doesn't mean that it doesn't hold up, but it just is a fact of the production and what we expect from, I think, coming of age and quote unquote family movies. Which sorry, go ahead.
And I think too, it's like should that be a metric of like a good movie? Is it timeless? But I mean the teen pick genre, the kind of youth fantasy, that's often been really of its moment because it's trying to capture a youth audience, and a lot of the references are things that are within the last 5 years. And so I think it's rare sometimes that a teen pick becomes timeless. Because it's almost designed to be a time capsule.
Exactly. And there's something so special too about opening up that time capsule. I mean, that's like catnip for our listeners. That's what we do here is we open up the time capsule.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, they say that like nostalgia is kind of like finding a box of old baseball cards under your bed. It's like you don't remember the players anymore, but you remember how it felt.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I think that practice of nostalgia is really, really powerful, right? It takes you back to a moment in which you imagined a simpler time. Right? And so it's such a powerful drug.
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
nostalgia, it comes from the Greek to remember through pain, which is really interesting.
Oh my God, ouch.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's something that you're not going to get from most of our guests, listeners. And that's why we have a very special guest for this very special movie, Labyrinth. We can't just have any old schmuck coming on here to talk about such an important, iconic movie. Tell me about your history with this movie.
So I've been doing these events at Meow Wolf, which, if you don't know, is this kind of immersive art installation. And I wanted to do surreal movies. This is the other part of Rainbow Cult is, and also what I think is like the future of spectatorship is venue-driven cinema.
Totally.
Right? And like so I was like, what kind of films would be at home in this space? Or could think of it as, so I did The Fifth Element there. I did Everything, Everywhere, All at Once there. And I thought Labyrinth, I would love to do. And to really make it immersive, I thought, okay, but I would have to include puppetry.
Obviously.
And so I didn't want to do it until I kind of had those connections. And lucky for me, I helped my friend out on a film that he was making called When Baked Goods Attack. It's very like Jim Henson-y Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, and they have this like 4-tier cake that eats sweating guests.
Wow. Oh my God, it's so Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, totally.
I love that.
And so I met folks there that run a monster shop in town called Six Demon Bag.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so once I kind of asked them if they wanted to participate in the Labyrinth, it really kind of opened things up. And
so cool.
So we did a full like puppetry spectacle. It was fabulous. And so, but my memory of this film, I had a couple sexual awakenings as a young gay boy. This is one of them. My other one, interestingly enough, was Annie Lennox in Eurythmics. And and though I identify as gay, there's something about the androgyny that I found so appealing
Yeah.
in this in a way that I didn't even really understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so David Bowie was a big draw for me.
Totally.
But I'm in the pocket for this film of like Muppets and Dark Crystal.
Oh,
and
for sure.
yeah, I was part of a puppetry troupe once upon a time called the Puppet Queers. We did.
No way.
Yeah, it's true. We did foul mouth versions of musicals.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So like the producers and like stuff like that.
Like the plays?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did, my favorite things from Sound of Music, but as like a kink number.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Let me see if I can remember. Cold metal, cock rings, and warm golden showers. Oh, is this okay for that? That's just a taste.
Just a little taste. Wow. Oh my God. Puppet queers.
So I love puppetry. I love practical effects. I have nostalgia for those. Those films that used practical effects. And if there's nothing that kicks me out of a movie more than like feeling the green screen.
Yeah.
When I feel like, I don't know, like what was it? In like King Kong, like when what was the woman's name? The Australian.
Oh,
Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
When she's like acting against King Kong, I'm like, you are looking at a tennis ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I feel like the actors aren't even in the same room together,
right,
it kicks me out of the movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so sad to think about like filming an entire movie without interacting with your scene partner at all.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like acting over Zoom. You know what I mean?
So weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is definitely an appeal of Labyrinth, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing that I thought about when you were describing some of the movies that you were hosting at Meow Wolf, I hadn't even put together how much Everything Everywhere All at Once is so inspired by movies like The Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
Labyrinth, sorry, drop the.
Yeah, I mean, Everything Everywhere is such a blender, right, of influences, and it was smart because it used like a multiversal metaphor to almost like enter into different genres.
Exactly.
Right? It's like the romance happens and suddenly they're in a Wong Kar-wai film. You know?
Totally.
Yeah. So I love that about it.
Oh, it's so creative. I love original IP. We all do.
Well, what about you? What's your relationship to Labyrinth?
So my relationship to Labyrinth is when I was in 7th grade, there was a day where our choir teacher had a substitute and we watched Labyrinth. And I was like, this is I thought it was so bizarre. I was a little bit scared, even though I was probably too old to actually be.
How old were you?
I was 12.
Okay. I mean, that's interesting because it is like a coming of age narrative, and it's interesting that you kind of watched it at that age.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, to be fair, when I was younger, like I was also scared by E.T. I thought that he was so scary. I know we love him.
One of my favorite movies ever. But I would love to talk about E.T. with you at some point.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
We absolutely must. But I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, that movie was so weird. I didn't know that much about David Bowie. I mean, I knew that he was a rock star and I knew some of his songs, but I was so young that I didn't really have, and I kind of just missed the moment. However, I liked it enough that I went back and I watched it in college a couple of times just as I don't know, I think there is something about that coming of age movie that is so soothing, even if it's about a goblin that kidnaps a baby. There's still something so soothing about it because it's like that familiar feeling of, was it all a dream or not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I think it's like, it is an 80s film. I think it's about being a latchkey child.
100%. This movie could only be made in the 80s.
Yeah,
One,
exactly.
because the definition of what is a family movie in the 80s is so wild to me. Every movie that's like made for kids is about like eating babies and like
right.
and is so scary.
Yeah.
And second of all, this latchkey kid who's like, has to come home to babysit her little brother who has no attention from their parents. I mean, the fact that she does not wonder at any point during the movie, my parents are going to be so concerned about where I am. Not once. It didn't come up at all.
Yeah. So if you're, I read this film as a flight from heteronormativity.
Okay,
and so
love that.
She's sort of expected to become her mother, essentially, right? And sort of saddled with this child, and who calls her into like the labyrinth, but this like super queer figure, right?
Totally.
She steps into a musical, like that queerest of genres.
So true.
She finds a chosen family, and so
Of little monsters.
of little monsters, right? Exactly.
And big monsters.
Exactly, and so and it also fits that what we call it like the female gothic plot. So the like Blackbeard or Bluebeard, Rebecca, any film in which a young woman is drawn to a charismatic older male figure and is enticed by their power, but eventually has to repudiate them. So Silence of the Lambs is another version of that. And interestingly, in the teen pick genre, the female gothic plot becomes other girls. So Heathers, Mean Girls.
Oh yes.
And so you're seeing a little bit of that, which I think is really interesting. That part of it is her coming of age is figuring out how the world works.
Right.
And one big thing is that they say over and over again, that's not fair. Right.
Oh my God,
and this is like the one, I think one of the big lessons of that. And like, it's a hard lesson to learn, but also to teach to children.
Yes.
Right. That life is not fair. And
100%.
What do you do with that?
Right. That is her whole thing throughout the whole movie is like, that's not fair. And then these little monsters are like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like she's, it's interesting because it makes me think that, before she goes on this adventure, maybe she's experienced a life that does feel very fair to her. Or maybe she hasn't. She's privileged, certainly.
Absolutely. I don't think she's experienced that yet, that life isn't fair.
Right. Like it sounds like, or it seems to me like this responsibility of the little brother or having a much younger sibling is maybe the first time that she's experienced life being unfair. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. And it's interesting, like the coming of age story is like the Bildungsroman, right?
Right.
And so it's the German for a novel of education. But a lot of people call it a novel of disillusionment. And I like that idea. Like it's learning that the world is not made for you, right?
Right.
Is a lesson you have to, so some people have to learn.
Yes. She's rejecting the heteronormativity.
And the expectation of it, right? And I think by the end, she's figured out that I could have any of these things, right? Rather than falling in lockstep with her mother.
Exactly.
Which is what the female coming of age story is usually about.
Right.
So if we distinguish it from like the male coming of age story, the male coming of age is like go forth, conquer the dragon, institute yourself as king, right? It's colonialism.
Right. Totally.
The female coming of age story is usually Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz. Go have an experience, get it out of your system.
Yeah. And then come back.
And come back to your shitty Kansas life.
Right.
And accept it.
Yeah.
It's really about surrendering. Surrender, Dorothy.
So interesting.
Yeah. And so what I find interesting about Labyrinth is that it is more complex. And, part of Dorothy's story, at least in the film, is about her passivity and that... And I like that this Labyrinth kind of doubles the sequence where Dorothy arrives at Emerald City with the gate, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is Dorothy gets into the Emerald City by crying.
Right.
And he feels sorry for her.
Yeah.
Right. This is how she progresses across, on this little, playboard, whereas Sarah has to figure shit out.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that about this film.
Yeah. She has to be really... strategic. She has to think outside the box. She has to learn how to distrust things as they appear.
She has to learn how to be unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she has to reject the shall we say, seduction
Oh,
of,
I love seduction as a word. Yes.
oh my gosh, the
Yes.
seduction of this Goblin King, of this gorgeous Goblin King.
Absolutely.
Can we talk for just a second about the bulge?
Yes. So you used to see for that the design, I put the halo around his bulge.
This,
Okay.
for the listeners on the screen, there we are.
Yeah, no, I think the codpiece is iconic. It's up there with Sting's codpiece and
Yes.
Dune.
Yes.
As suggestive bulge. I mean, so it's really interesting. So there's a lot of things. Speaking of like being a pop culture blender, this is a pop culture blender. We have elements of Wizard of Oz. We have elements of the Changeling myth. We have the Labyrinth, right? Which comes and who is the Minotaur?
Right.
At the center of the Labyrinth.
Right.
But this like codpiece, super cock rocky, androgynous dude. You know what I mean? And so I find that so interesting how he meshes like male and female signifiers.
Right.
And so it's not about this girl. She's like rejecting, I don't know, like traditional femininity. It's like she's like sort of embracing queerness, but then sort of like backing away from it. I find that fascinating.
I do too, because it seems as though the Goblin King is not a. We're not meant to think he's so creepy because he's androgynous. It's a part of his allure and his seduction that we are. He's so hot, but we can't explain why.
Right. It's because he's fondling those balls all the time.
He's fondling the balls.
Super,
and he's got a giant
super
bulge,
hot.
and he's got glitter on his, the perfect spot on his cheekbones, on his, already snatched cheekbones.
Well, there's this also this sort of idea of like the trials of Hera often gets invoked in some of these coming of age narratives. So like the Devil Wears Prada is where the Hera puts a young maiden through a series of trials to mature her.
Yeah.
And I think there's a certain element here as well.
Right.
Right. That he is, and if we get to the end and we kind of understand the labyrinth as a manifestation of her own psyche.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Then it gets really interesting. It gets even more Freudian.
Right.
Because then she's Arachne, right? She's the one who built the labyrinth.
Oh, whoa. I had never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, here's another thing, is that the Goblin King, Jareth, he, although on the surface his objective is to turn this baby into a goblin.
Right.
But really, does it matter to him that much if this baby is a goblin or a baby? No, it's not. He's got a million other little goblins running around to do his stuff. He's truly just using it as a tool to get Sarah through the labyrinth. It's not that he really has much to gain anyway.
Yeah. So like in an Ozian sense, he is Glinda. Right.
Yeah.
He's the one who says, yeah, I could tell you like how to mature. Right. But you're not going to listen.
But you're
to
not
that.
going to listen.
Yeah.
So
You have to go through the experience. And so he is at the beginning and the end of the journey. Right. And so I think as a take on Glinda, he's really interesting. And there's lots of kind of Ozian touches, when she first arrives and we have the, I'm forgetting the troll character.
Hoggle?
Hoggle. So it's, you could go this way or you could go that way. He's a very scarecrow kind of figure. It doesn't match on perfectly, but you can feel the influence.
Totally.
Right?
And all of the little pieces of like pop culture paraphernalia in her room and like these little nods. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, keep going.
I noticed this time around when the troll woman was pushing all of that toys and books and everything, there was a copy of The Wizard of Oz. I said, I see that.
Yeah. So my favorite quotation of Labyrinth is in the Disney show Agatha All Along.
Oh, okay.
Where Wiccan's bedroom, it has all of the influences that built this labyrinth that he created.
Cool.
So it's a fun... it's really kind of interesting when we think about like the spread of films or the influence of films. There was a study done by the University of Turin that found that Wizard of Oz was the most referenced movie in all of cinema.
Wow.
And so we can almost do like I think of it as like a disease vector analysis of like influence, you know, like
Totally.
are certain films sluttier than others,
Yeah.
right? And said with love.
Yes, we love.
And so like are some films more textually promiscuous? I like to say. And so when we look at like this text is quoting Labyrinth, it's also sleeping with everyone that Labyrinth has slept with, right?
Yeah, totally. Oh my God, it's like that. What is it called in the L Word? That big chart that they create.
right, exactly.
It's that, but for movies.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. There's something that I wanted to ask you about the Jim Henson of it all. I'm curious just what you think about Jim Henson as a director. You had mentioned that you're very into Muppets, that you were kind of like in the pocket for this film. But yeah, tell me about your Jim Henson experience.
I mean, so I was born in 1977, so very much an 80s child. And so this was just like woven into my childhood, you know? And this was an early era in which people were really thinking about called like the toyetic properties of movie, like what characters translate well into something that someone will buy, like an Ewok, right? And so I just think the creature design of this era was kind of unparalleled. And there's such weird features of this specific Labyrinth world. So I'm thinking about like, the little creatures that attack Ludo. It's fascinating. They kind of look like the comic book wizards, but it's like small horses with huge riders, and then smaller creatures on poles.
Right.
Very strange.
So
some of the form choices in this film. And so, I don't know. I could be compelled by that. I think in another life, maybe I would have made like movie monster kind of stuff, because that just seems so open and creative to me.
Yeah. I think that there is... in recent years, there's such a fondness for practical design in movies and practical effects. And I think that even though this movie couldn't be made today, because I don't think that that a studio would want to fund a film full of puppets, I think that audiences would love it.
Yeah.
I think audiences, they want the Muppets back. They want the Muppets. They want... maybe not puppets specifically. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I think in general, people really do crave the practical elements in movies that we so often miss.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I'm thinking about the season of Dark Crystal that was on Netflix, and the discourse around that was that, like, people loved it, they tuned in, but it was too expensive.
Exactly.
Right? And so there's like this sort of like efficiency algorithm that keeps something like this from being done again, right?
Totally.
It's like, people are tuning in to watch it, but we could make something faster and cheaper.
Yeah.
So let's do that. You know what I mean? And so I think it needs to be something more revolutionary to bring back practical effects. And I don't know what that is. I do think that the model we have for film spectatorship is going to change drastically.
In what ways
in the next 10 years? Well, the democratization of technology says that I can put movie scale and movie sound in any space.
Yeah.
So why do I need to go to a movie theater anymore?
Right.
What makes that experience special?
Right.
Other than its exorbitant price and its overpriced concessions. Like, if I create an environment, I don't know, my pipe dream is to create like a donation-based movie theater.
Cool.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yes.
And and maybe like a multi-use space, but like for me it takes us back to like the early days of cinema in which film was a part of an evening at a vaudeville. And that's what I think it will probably become, that that will have multi-use spaces where film spectatorship is part of it.
Yes.
But not the exclusive.
But not exclusively.
Yeah.
It's not going to exclusively be a movie theater It's going to be a multi-use space, a space like Dude IDK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a cool, and this is like, I think the future of cinema too is like venue-driven cinema experiences. So like I could see doing, you know, like a Pee-wee's Big Adventure here, right? Or I want to watch Jaws at a pool.
Yeah.
I want to watch Jurassic Park in the dinosaur exhibit at the Natural History Museum.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, even those, even if it's not necessarily explicitly so tied to the venue, the Film on the Rock series sells out always. But it's so incredibly popular to like go to a place that feels like it's beyond a movie theater and it's something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, like, why do we have to project on a movie screen? You know what I mean? We have so many surfaces that can be really fun. And so that's what I like to do at Meow Wolf is it's in their performance space, which has the ability to digitally project 360 degrees.
Cool.
And so it's almost like video DJing a movie.
That's
where
so cool.
we kind of like think, okay, you're in a forest, let's put a forest scene around you or smoke or fog. When we did Everything Everywhere All at Once, there's a great AV designer that I worked with, Duke, who is just like, oh, hog wild with it. Like what?
Amazing.
Like surreal, trippy, make it feel like you're in a drug trip, you know what I mean?
That's so cool.
So,
oh my God, you know what we need to do? We need Labyrinth at the Sphere in Vegas.
Ooh, wouldn't that be fun?
Let's get Labyrinth at the Sphere.
I love that. Let's campaign.
Okay, let's campaign.
Yeah.
I bet it'll be so easy. Let's just call them.
Right.
Next Rainbow Cult showing. We're going on a field trip, ladies.
I mean, my dream, honestly, is to do like Elvira's Mistress of the Night and have Cassandra Peterson there.
Yeah.
Or, you know, do
Oh my gosh, yes.
Pink Flamingos and have Mink Stoll there.
Oh my God,
so I'd love to kind of get to that level.
Yeah.
And I do think there's something really interesting happening creatively here in Denver. And
Absolutely.
So, like, we've talked about that. Like, the stand-up here is really fascinating.
Incredible.
The different art scene. It's really, I think it's a place to be.
It is a place to be. Yeah. Whether you create music or film or you work in like physical art. What am I trying to say? Like sculpture or like textiles or whatever. Like there's so much cool stuff going on in Denver.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. And speaking of movie theaters with donations, everyone should consider becoming a C Film Center member. Just become a member. You get discounts on snacks too.
Yeah. I love supporting our independent movie theaters.
We sure do. Okay, I know that this movie Labyrinth is most often compared to Wizard of Oz, but it really reminded me more of Return to Oz.
Oh God, yeah.
Because it was just so kooky.
So dark.
And so dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I thought as I was watching it, I had more of the experience or the feeling of watching Return to Oz than I did the original source material. A thing that I also love about a 90-minute movie is that we waste no time with backstory. We know everything we need to know about her in the first like 3 minutes, and then we're in the labyrinth.
You're like, you're insufferable.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
Just go. Yeah. Like
absolutely.
I didn't need to know anything about her other friends outside of the labyrinth.
Right.
I didn't need to know about anything at school. I didn't need to know anything. I could just project whatever I wanted onto her. And we get into the action right away. I mean, she meets the worm within the first like 10 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. Were you more scared by the Helping Hands or the Fire Gang?
The Fire Gang aren't scary to me. They're
They're not
silly.
scary. They're scary to me.
Are they really?
Well, scary in the sense of like they felt the most. Well, it's hard to say between the Hands and the Fire Gang which ones felt more like harassing. You know, I felt the Fire Gang. I was just like, oh, guys, stop!
This song goes on too long. Stop.
No, just stop.
Yeah, no, the Hands are definitely uncomfortable from a modern
Certainly.
perspective.
Yes,
especially.
from a modern
I
perspective.
don't know that it like, sort of like signaled when I was younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be. I did think for Jennifer Connelly, even like as an actress, I'm thinking like, what a weird experience that could have been.
To be grabbed by hands that are not really hands, but they are still controlled by real people.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking
You know what
weird.
actually did scare me was the cleaners.
Oh my God. So scary.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that moment comes so flippantly, from
Yes.
Jareth.
Yeah.
Where
He goes,
she's like, how are things going? She's like, it's fine. He's like, oh, is it?
And then he goes, send in the cleaners.
Right, exactly. Send in this thing to murder, this huge murder machine. Oh my God. Like,
Oh my
I already have
God.
like kind of claustrophobia, so that idea of like walls
Yeah.
closing in, I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah,
Don't
totally.
like the garbage chute in Star Wars. I don't like
No.
that stuff.
Because for so much of Labyrinth, at least it's like open air.
Yeah,
There's only a
absolutely.
few scenes where it really feels cave-like,
Mm-hmm.
or when she goes into little like foxholes and nooks
Mm-hmm.
and crannies. For the most part, she is walking in an open air
Mm-hmm.
labyrinth.
Yeah, and sometimes like beautiful, like a
Yeah.
finely manicured English garden. You know what I
Totally.
mean? So it's not so menacing as
Yeah.
we've seen in others. The film that I sometimes confuse this with is Legend.
Okay.
Like the Mia Sara film. And so there's a lot of stuff where I really like. And they both have those like male charismatic
Yeah.
sexual figures at the
Right.
center.
Sexual but evil.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a moment with this sort of subgenre of like Never-Ending Story and Legend and Labyrinth, and
Yeah.
where this sort of like neo fairy tale,
Yeah. Totally.
in the 80s.
Yeah. They were really into that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the next class next film I'm teaching is Breakfast Club.
Interesting.
Tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, cool.
And so these sort of like teen picks tend to come up during periods where teens have more freedom than they'd have in previous generations.
Yeah.
And specifically, like the mall becomes this place where young people like congregated,
Yeah.
and a lot of fear of influence and what are they consuming, and
Right.
that sort of thing. And so I do think like these coming of age stories in the 80s are unique.
Yeah.
And not always coherent in like their thinking.
Certainly not. If anyone watches Labyrinth and thinks that's coherent, your brain is a wild place, and I want to meet you.
Right.
Okay, I think that it's probably time that we get into how, even though this, okay, sorry. I'm having a hard time articulating exactly how I want to frame this question, because there isn't really a straight answer, I don't think. And if anyone has what they believe is the right answer to this question, you go ahead and let me know. How do we reconcile, or what is the equation for, like, can we have two inputs of like rock star or really influential artist does a bad thing or allegedly does bad things,
Yeah.
and the input of their good work and
Sure.
influence, and get a nice clean answer of how can we appreciate this person?
Sure. This is a big question.
This
I mean,
can you create that algorithm for us is what I'm asking. But like it's very interesting watching this movie with a seductive character played by David Bowie,
Yeah.
with a 16-year-old girl, in a way that when I watched it this time, it didn't feel predatory.
Right.
And I can't exactly explain why this time it didn't feel predatory.
Okay. But it has in the past?
When I watched it in 7th grade, I was like, this is kind of creepy. But I think it was the baby stealing of it all, too. I just found him
right.
to be, maybe predatory is not the right word, but just creepy. And this time I found him more intriguing and
Yeah.
seductive than
Yeah.
creepy. But it's watching that in the context of, allegations against David Bowie for statutory rape of young girls.
Right.
It's kind of like, how does that color your experience or not of watching this film?
I mean, it can't not, right?
Right.
I would say certain figures almost become bigger than their biography, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
And I don't want to use that line of thinking all the time.
Yeah.
The question a lot of times when we teach film is like, do I teach Woody Allen? Do I teach Roman
Right.
Polanski?
Right.
I would say yes, you should, but you should be aware, right? You should frame it. And so I've always wanted to teach a class on Roman Polanski, but because if auteur theory, if that's the approach, is like reading biography against art, who has a more fucked up biography than Roman Polanski, right? And so, but with David Bowie, I guess for me, I think of the character more than I think of the man.
Absolutely. He really, I mean, not only because he had different characters that he played in the public eye, but because he really is more of a brand than a person to most of the world. Yeah. Because you and I didn't know him personally. Right. We don't know. So what we do know of him is our experience with him as a brand or as a character, as multiple characters. Right. And so that becomes, it's sort of, it's still impossible to separate the brand or the characters from the man who allegedly acts in ways that are not okay. Right. However, how does that color our experience with the character? Yes. Not just the character Jareth, but the character David Bowie.
Well, I think the concern is my pleasure complicit? Right? Yeah. And I think you can make that argument as a fully aware adult watching something, and you have a sort of a critical awareness to say, okay, let me like think about how this character is positioned and what David Bowie, might have been doing behind the scenes. Right. To a child though, I had this experience with this text. And that doesn't change when I know more about the actor's biography. Right. And so I think with this podcast, what we're talking about is like we had a transformative experience with this piece of art, and that is the memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it feels so much more personal to me, my experience with a movie, than my experience with a celebrity who I've never really, I mean, for me specifically, like I've never really had this like, close parasocial relationship to David Bowie, but I mean, I admire David Bowie. Right. I admire his work. I admire his influence. I think he's so cool. But to think about my transformative experience with a movie feels so much more true to me than my analysis of or my wrestling with is this a good person or not? Right. Or is this not even necessarily is this a good person, but is this person like permissible in my media consumption? I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think that's the interesting thing is about the questions that you're asking, right? It's like, well, what do I do with my adolescent pleasure in something that I now find problematic? Right. And also in that I want to resist the problematic elements because I'm like, oh, I just want it to not be true because I don't want anything negative to hinder this experience that I have with this artist. You know what I mean? It's absolutely. It's like the feeling that we have when we discover that an actor or director, some influential artist has done something bad, and we're like, oh, but I loved that show, or I loved that thing that they were in, or I loved that album. Okay, the good example for me is Buffy. Like, how do I enjoy Buffy knowing what I know now about Joss Whedon?
Oh, that's so tough.
And especially given that we're going to reboot it, right, without Joss Whedon. And I do think the text stands alone. Yeah. In a certain sense, like, he may have been a really real asshole to his female actors, and that's shitty. But like, the mythology exists, so what can we do with it now?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and that's why I think it is important to talk about the whole person and the whole character and the whole brand. Like you said, it like should we teach Woody Allen? It's like we should, and we should be so upfront about all of the truths here.
Yeah, like let's watch a Woody Allen film and look at how like gross it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really cool. Gosh, when I interviewed for my position at CU Denver, one of the questions they asked me in the interview is, should you teach Birth of a Nation? And I think it's a great question. And famously, Spike Lee talks about how he was in a film history course and they taught Birth of a Nation, and they didn't want to engage with race at all in the conversation. It was just like, this is a work of art that was influential.
Oh my
God. And I was like,
God.
no, you teach it, but you teach it for what it is. It's propaganda, right?
Exactly.
And so like
yes.
how does the propaganda work? And so I don't like that argument of like,
Yeah.
well, that figure's problematic now, so we should like sort of send all of their media into
Right.
but I think what's really interesting about looking back at films is saying like, oh, here's this film from the 80s that I loved, look how fucked up it is about consent.
Right.
Like the films of John Hughes.
Exactly.
And so I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because as an 18-year-old, it didn't dawn on me that was a problem.
Right.
And let's talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It didn't dawn on really anybody, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's like the whole, it's like the whole point of this podcast, right? Is to look back on these things, to talk about the good, the bad, the gray areas, mostly gray.
And also, I think it's like sometimes as a spectator, what are you willing to ignore in a text in order to preserve enjoyment?
Right.
And that's kind of an interesting discussion.
Exactly. And that's the part of, that's like the cognitive dissonance in me that I have to try and resist as I go back and watch these movies. I have to resist the desire to just wash away or like wipe away the things that I don't like, or say, well, we're just not going to talk about that.
Right.
Because that's not taking it for what it is, and that's not exploring a film for everything that it does. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like, I don't know, David Bowie is so cool. And I still love him in this movie. I'm so glad that he was cast in this movie. I think that, I mean, as you brought up in your fun facts, that Sting and Michael Jackson were also considered for this role.
Could you imagine Michael Jackson in this role, though?
No. Well,
weird movie that would have been.
That's a horror film.
Yeah,
that's scary.
That would have been like super predictive.
A little bit too on the nose. I think Sting would have been fine, but Bowie is just so perfect for it.
So it's interesting because he's a sexually charismatic figure, but he is not attractive, and at least to me,
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of fascinating. What I find appealing to him is the androgyny, and I guess it's what I find so appealing about drag, just as an art form, is like the balls it takes for a man to dress as a woman.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's hot because it's subversive.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of what, like, makes Bowie hot, is that he is wearing glitter on his perfectly snatched cheekbones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of the act of what it means to wear glitter, you know? Not just that it's beautiful and you're like, oh, wow, look at those cheekbones. But the act itself. Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, in cult films in general tend to center figures that are like gender transgressive.
Yeah.
So like a lot of like out of control female bodied figures like Divine, Elvira.
Totally.
You know, and so I think that the same could be true, that the men in cult movies tend to be, you know, more towards the feminine. Pee-wee Herman. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really interesting feature of cult movies, and why audiences embrace them is because they are so atypical.
Right.
Right. To the normal presentation of gender in film.
Right.
Yeah.
A part of me wonders if maybe that is part of the reason why Labyrinth wasn't so commercially successful.
Yeah.
But then it also leaves the question of like, well, then why was it more popular overseas? Was it because David Bowie is English? Like,
Yeah,
what's
I
the
think
deal?
it's much more popular in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we think about like cult movies are sometimes ahead of their time,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be surprised if it's more embraced more
Right.
overseas.
Yeah.
Maybe it had more time to percolate in the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
tough to say.
Yeah. Tough to say. It's all speculation. I wasn't there. Okay. There's one scene that I find really fascinating that I wanted to talk about with you. So when Sarah goes into the troll woman's little hole and she goes through the doors and she's back in her bedroom and she's being piled with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the troll woman has all of the stuff that she's carrying around with her from the junkyard. And she's like, oh, do you want this doll? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? You want this, don't you? You want this. And I kind of read it at first as like a, she has to be presented with all of these comforts of her youth and then reject them in order to go on to the next phase. But I think it could also be read as a tale of consumerism.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what you think.
Yeah, I tended towards that first reading initially because it is a lot of stuffed animals, right? It seems
Right.
like
It's a lot of
kid
toys.
stuff. And then she gives her lipstick and tells her to put the lipstick on. And for me, I'm like, I don't know. That takes it out of that reading for me. That this
Yeah.
seems to be an object of womanhood, right?
Yeah,
For,
that
like,
was really interesting.
and so I read it more about the sort of comforts. And one reason I think that is, thinking about like influence as a kind of like vector analysis. So The Wiz, the black adaptation of Wizard of Oz, it takes a much more progressive take on the story. And when Dorothy goes to Emerald City, it's not perfection and glamour. It's like Studio 54,
Yeah.
right? It's and the wizard maintains his control by constantly creating fads, right? Like the color is green, now the color is
Yeah.
red. Go out and buy gold, and it works. And so the Wiz becomes a major influence on the Hunger Games,
Right.
and
yeah.
so the capital city is basically the Emerald City, right?
Where it's like, something's weird here.
and it's all bread and circus.
Yeah.
Right, and
yeah.
and Wicked is picking up on that as well.
Right.
And so I feel like, given that it has DNA with Wizard of Oz, I feel like it is about consumerism as distraction.
Yeah.
And the closest we get in the 39 film is the poppy field.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was L. Frank Baum's warning. One of the in jokes in Wizard of Oz that I love is that so poppies are like opium, right? So she wanders into an opium den, and Glinda sends cocaine to wake her up.
Right. 100%.
It's like go circuit mom.
Love her.
So yeah. So when I get back to Labyrinth, given those kind of like influences, I think it is about consumerism as distraction, because she's also in danger of being distracted by the masquerade ball.
Exactly.
And so I think that this is like the danger of self-actualization for Sarah, is that she's going to get distracted by objects.
Right.
And childlike objects, yes, but like comfortable objects. She's
Yeah.
going to be distracted by nostalgia, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? She's going to be distracted by the trappings of like class, and the frivolousness of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the just the weight of all of it. Like she becomes so burdened by it. Her hands are full. She's piling stuff on top of her. She can't hold it all anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious though what you think about the masquerade sequence. So what's that about?
Okay, that to me is about, it's a further distraction. And part of me thinks like, oh, it's just an element of plot. He's distracting her with a party, but it's never just that.
But she gets so traditionally feminine.
Yeah, she's
that
like,
sequence?
she looks like she's dolled up for a wedding, or but also a quinceañera at the same time, like, but also like perfectly for a masquerade ball in the 80s. Like she is just like, she is so hyper feminine in that scene, and I think that it's part of the drag of it all, almost
I like that.
when you look at the when you look at all of the gremlins and all of the creatures that are there, they're in masks, they're wearing, kind of like ridiculous, silly things. And so I think that the exaggeration of it all is kind of just playing up the fantasy or the disconnection from reality because it's so elevated.
Right. What do you make then of her wearing that costume when the film begins? Right. So I feel like this is her fantasy. Right.
Right.
Is, I would argue, like the fairy tale-ness of it all, which is about waiting,
right?
Which is it's about sort of passivity, essentially.
And
I think that's the danger of like what fantasy do you have, right?
I think that she discovers that her self-actualization process is that what she thinks she wants is not actually what she wants. Her wish in the beginning is for her brother to go away. Her wish is to, experience this fairy tale story. And as she goes through the process, she has to actively reject that. And she discovers in herself and in the world around her what actually matters to her. And so I think that the fact that it calls back to the very beginning of the movie is just showing us, again, her growth and her development and ultimately how she has to reject it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, I don't know, but I thought that it was really fun. I wanted to go to that party.
Yeah.
I wanted to put a mask on me. I'll dance around with those little freaks.
So a couple of really interesting features, right, is that it's all a mirror, right?
Yeah.
It's just a reflection. It's glass. And then that the other guests are laughing at her is really interesting as well. I don't know if you thought at all about that. It reminds me of Carrie, that sequence.
Oh, yeah. Because it is also kind of like...
So if we take it like micro, it's maybe about like school, girls, adolescence, popularity, right?
Yeah, it could be.
And how that can be a kind of trap.
It could be.
The sort of like frivolousness of
the pageantry of like these what are they called, rites of passage. You know what I mean? Like prom or a quinceañera or or like a coming out party or whatever or a bat mitzvah, whatever, a debutante ball, a bat mitzvah, whatever cultural point of reference you have for a rite of passage. Maybe it is making fun of that. Maybe it's maybe they're laughing at her even participating in it. So I don't know, but I also had just made the connection. One thing that I was going to say off mic that I said, no, I'm going to save it for on mic, is the mirror and like the through the looking glass element of it.
Totally.
First time that ever hit me this time around, like the 10th time that I've watched it, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess maybe it's a call to the looking glass. But that was really interesting to me, and it kind of changed the way that I read that scene.
Yeah, and it's interesting thinking about like the way the characters move through these types of films, right? Dorothy is follow an existing path.
Yeah.
This is like a labyrinthine. Alice has to move across a chessboard.
Right.
Right, which at the end are her two choices of what she can be. You can be a red queen or you can be a white queen, right? And so it's a sort of predetermined path. This seems like branching, but it all ends the same place, which is interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. It was about the journey all along. Okay. The part that really tugged my heartstrings was when Hoggle says, I've lost my only friend.
I know.
Oh, my God. This chosen family. It's so sweet and cute. Oh, Hoggle. I just wanted to give him a big hug.
He has the most character arc of anyone in the film.
He does, yes. He has to reject his leader. He has to go through all these different feelings that he has about his new friend.
Yeah. It's interesting. His figure, the reformed henchman trope, is usually it's usually that they divorce themselves from the villain and enter into the romance plot with the protagonist. But this, of course, doesn't happen.
Right.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. He has the there's like that little nod to potential romance, but I think is ultimately friendship with the kiss when Jareth says, like, you know, if you, what is it that he says about, like, what's the consequence if she kisses him? I don't remember. Anyway, there's like something about a kiss, and I was kind of like,
Might be herpes, maybe. It's a little cold sore. I think that was the guy. I don't trust my memory, but, you know.
But he looks like he might have a couple.
Yes, it's more of a complex than a simplex.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, let's see if there's anything else that that we need to discuss. I read that Jim Henson was really disappointed by the critical response, but he died knowing that it was a cult classic because his son was like, look, people love it. So at least he died knowing that
True.
that it was a success.
It's interesting. I don't. We kind of speculated earlier the like gender maybe might be a part of it. Maybe by this point we were like oversaturated with children's fantasy pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find that films that mix live characters and puppetry characters are often kind of a hard sell. So who knows?
But at the same time, every celebrity was hanging out with the Muppets.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
It's less of a production, maybe, but like, you know, even Lady Gaga, God bless her.
Even Lady Gaga.
What else do you think we need to discuss? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think would be good to touch on?
Can we talk about her costume?
Yes.
I mean, I joke that it's a queer film because she's dressed like a 90s lesbian comedian.
She absolutely is.
I think Ellen DeGeneres stole her look.
Give her a microphone. She's ready. She's ready for her hour-long special.
Am I right, ladies?
She absolutely did. I was thinking about dressing up like her coming here because she kind of is my aesthetic.
I love it.
But I was like, no, Molly, you don't just wear your normal clothes. It'll be close enough.
She's like, is this vest long enough? No.
Right. No.
My knees.
Longer. Is it flowy enough? No. Flowier. Are these jeans light wash enough? No. Lighten them up.
She's like, I could have two colors, but it's just my taupe era.
Yeah. She said monochrome, baby. Oh, she's amazing. But okay, Jennifer Connelly.
I love Jennifer Connelly.
You love her.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
I do. What has she done lately? Is that what you're gonna ask?
No, I'm just gonna ask what you think about her. What?
I don't know. I mean, I thought about this the other day. I want to get a side by side of Demi Moore and Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
Am I insane?
No, you're not insane. I mix the two of them up all the time.
It's really, I don't know. Maybe they have different eyebrows, but even Jennifer Connelly has like kind of thick eyebrows.
Yeah. Her eyebrows looked okay in the scene with the masquerade. Her eyebrows looked amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, I was so grateful that this was the 80s and not the 90s, because if it was the 90s, it would be two little sticks.
Exactly.
And in this, it was like they were full. They were gorgeous.
Yeah,
I loved them.
I really like Jennifer Connelly. I don't think she would ever do like a Gonzo performance like Demi Moore did in The Substance.
Probably not.
I mean, of course, I guess like what do you call Requiem for a Dream. That's a Gonzo performance right there.
Yeah.
So maybe.
But Requiem for a Dream was humorless.
Yeah, it's true.
And The Substance was entertaining. Like, I would see The Substance again. I would never watch Requiem for a Dream again.
Yeah, I put it in that category for sure.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm glad I saw it. It was an experience, but no, thank you. Like Dancer in the Dark, I put in that category. Like,
it's like, okay, I saw it. I'd never have to see that again.
Right. But I have pop culture literacy. So
yes.
Ding ding.
So, ding ding.
Like, where does this rate for you in terms of like films of your adolescence, I guess? Like, did you love it with the same love you had for something else of this era?
I would say that I liked it.
Yeah.
I would say it wasn't like a super formative part of my youth, but it was there, and I still had a transformative experience watching it and rewatching it. And even this time that I rewatched it, I had a different experience. However, I think it was just a little bit before my time. And even though it was a sleeper hit and it was a cult classic, and just because I wasn't alive when it came out in the theaters doesn't mean that I missed the moment. But in some ways, I do feel like maybe I kind of missed the moment.
Yeah.
You know?
For me, this is a film I had a yen for David Bowie and like his gender play, and I loved like the creature design.
Yeah.
You know? Going back and watching, I'm like, the script is, you know,
Yeah.
it's a children's movie.
Right, literally, like, they don't have to explain to us what the bog smells like. They're just like, it's the eternal stench, and you're like, okay.
Right. And a lot of scenes went on way too long for me.
Oh my god, including that one. I was like, get out of the bog.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, the fire
it smells
gang.
Like farts.
Okay.
Yeah, that goes on a long time.
Oh my god.
It's fun. So like when I did this movie event, we called it like a tribute party at Meow Wolf. We shadow cast Magic Dance and the fire.
So cool.
And it's interesting, like Rocky Horror Picture Show, we have a great troupe here, Colorado's Elusive Ingredient, and they do this thing where like during parts of Rocky Horror Picture Show that are boring or go on too long, they'll like play a different song. They'll play like the chicken dance,
awesome.
you know, like and just because, and they'll put up on screen like this scene is boring, or this scene is too long, so
that's
do the chicken dance instead. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like
that too.
That sort of awareness of the faults in something that you love.
Exactly. Just like our awareness of the faults in David Bowie and other hot, cool men. Sorry.
Right, exactly.
But truly, I love that. I think that it shows a real love and respect for something if you're willing to not just critique it, but also kind of, in the case of Rocky Horror Picture Show and scenes that are boring, or even Labyrinth and scenes that are boring, to just say, yeah, this is boring, let's do something else.
For me, Labyrinth is a film that I could enjoy playing in the background while I'm doing things. And
Totally.
and this, I think this is how spectatorship works in large part, is like I will tune in for the parts that I'm there for. And in the case of like Labyrinth, I'm not there for the script.
No.
I'd love to have it all in the whole, full package.
Yeah.
But I'm there for the visuals. And and even the visual effects that don't hold up, I'm there for like the time capsule-ness of it. Like, oh, remember when that was innovative? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's kind of fun.
Just like the fire gang, when you're like, what am I? This is so whack.
And that specifically, the sequences that feel so cut and paste, and so like 2D. But I'm here for the creativity.
It's fun.
Of it. Yeah,
it's fun, and it's a time capsule, and that's why we like it.
And one of the things we do with Rainbow Cult is we invite people to cosplay, and so,
that's so cool.
The way that people went to really creative lengths to kind of like DIY these costumes for this was really, really fun.
So fun.
And so that's, I think, like the participation of it. Like every Halloween, you'll probably see someone dressed as like a Goblin King. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And because it's good character design, it's good creature design, you know it instantly, and that's one of the things I love about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
We love icons. We love when you can dress up as something for Halloween and people don't have to say, well, what are you?
Yeah, I mean, for films like this, I want to go and I want to see something I've never seen before, and that's what I love about really good creature design.
Exactly. Yeah. He's not just a monster.
Yeah.
He is the Goblin King.
Right. Yeah.
That's a different thing. He's not just a monster.
Right.
I love it. Well, anything that you'd like to leave the listeners with as we wrap up?
I don't think so. This design I have for Jareth is based on the magician card, and so that's how I like to think about.
So fun.
Jareth is like he's the catalytic figure. You know what I mean? And,
totally.
And so he's the alchemist essentially.
He's the alchemist.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. Do you have any upcoming events for Rainbow Cult?
I do. So March 21st, Friday at the Holiday Theater, we are going to do a 30th anniversary tribute to Rent.
Awesome.
And we have one of the original Broadway cast members is going to be there to
That's incredible.
talk about his experience.
Awesome.
And then our next Meow Wolf show, tickets are on sale April 13th and 14th. Palm Sunday and Monday, we're going to do an Easter-themed version of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh my God. That's so
I'm
fun.
really excited.
Heathens,
And
gather.
and we're going to have a Sexy Jesus contest. So
Oh my God.
Come prepared.
If you're sexy, which is all of you listeners,
Exactly.
come dress up. Well, seriously, Annie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I could not think of a better person who I could have on the show to talk about Labyrinth with, or really any weird little freak movie I wanted to talk about with my new friend Andy. So thank you for being here, and I'm excited to talk about many more movies in
I'm
the
excited
future.
too.
Yay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye, everybody.